Welcome, friends, to part 2 in our series with Katherine Hutka, who is the president of the Child Passenger Safety Association of Canada. So she's the one. She's got all the information. In our previous video, we did a little bit of an interview, talked about the state of the car seat industry, and then also covered a really important study commissioned with Cybex and in partnership with the nation to understand the state of safety in car seats in Canada. If you haven't had a chance to watch that, take a minute, pause, go watch that, or feel free to watch this video and go after, but you're gonna wanna check it out. However, today we are covering car seat installation tips and what to look for and how to know that your car seat is safely installed. We start with infant seats and we go all the way through to boosters. We've got timestamps if you wanna skip ahead and check different parts for your stage, no problem, but watch through, make sure you re-watch sections if you have any questions. And I think this is going to be really helpful to help keep you and your family safe in the car. So let's get after it. Okay, so we're back. We've got an infant car seat with us.
Yep.
Talk to us about the seat. Talk to us about what to look for, what to think about, the differences versus maybe later stages, and just give us some info.
And we were talking about what they're called. So in this case, this is a rear-facing only car seat. This car seat only faces the back of the car, right?
Generally, which means this right here is facing into
the back of the car. I know we've got it spun around the other way right now, but this is our rear-facing only car seat. Typically they have a handle. Typically they have a stay-in-car base and a carrier that goes with you, or it can be put in another vehicle. Typically they can be put into a vehicle without the stay-in-car base. So in this case, there's a way to put it in. If you're traveling and you're hopping into your mom's car or a taxi,
sure.
You can buckle just the carrier portion into, again, 99% of car seats. There's always challenges, there's variety, right? Innovation. But this is our rear-facing only seat, and most kiddos are going to start off in a rear-facing only seat. But that's not to say that they can't use a different car seat, from birth as well.
Okay.
So we'll talk about those ones next. But this one's typically, it always goes rear-facing, and it's outgrown by weight or height or a fit requirement, right? And so you would use this from birth to when one of those things is outgrown. So either the height maximum of your car seat, or the weight maximum of your car seat, or perhaps it might say like you can use this until the child's head has less than an inch above the top of the shell, right? So you got to think of all of those things. Most families are switching to the next stage car seat before this one's fully outgrown, mostly because it's getting a little heavy. You're dragging you down. Right? It's dragging you down. Maybe it's summer and you're not choosing to carry the carrier every time. You're unbuckling your child and carrying them anyway, and so that's when you're starting to think about kind of that next stage car seat.
When you're thinking about a good infant car seat, what are some of the things you're thinking about and looking for before you'd be like, ooh, this is a good seat?
Thinking about what makes a good seat. So the best seat, of course, is the one that fits your child, your vehicle, that you can use correctly every time. Your budget.
This is slight vindication for all of our YouTube videos where we repeat this every time. So thank you so much for that.
The best seat is the one that fits your child, fits your vehicle, fits your budget, and that you will and can use correctly on every ride. That is the best seat. Some people like different features. I like something that's very lightweight. Like I like, kiddos get heavy. I had a really heavy kiddo. I don't want something that's so heavy to carry with them.
So can I ask, a lot of people get nervous because they'll say like, oh, some car seats can only accommodate 22 pounds and they get sort of freaked out about that. Is there, that's really just means, no, it's perfectly safe. It just, they might outgrow it sooner.
Yeah. And so it's difficult to say like why a car seat company has come up with their weight limit. It's not necessarily that it didn't pass testing at a higher weight limit. It might have just been like that was what they were going for. That's the design that they had, right? And so we do want to make sure that we are following the limits for our seat. But at the same time, like sometimes you'll have a rear-facing only seat or an infant seat that'll say that it goes to 35 pounds. Well, I mean, some of us have 3- and 4-year-olds that are not yet 35 pounds because that seat is going to be then outgrown by fit or by height.
The average weight of a 2-year-old boy in Canada is 25 pounds.
So, so you're not going to get that car seat. And sometimes parents, they'll think, oh, I want to be able to use that to 35 pounds, but you need to look at that height, the weight, and how they fit in that seat. So
fits your budget, fits your car, that you can install correctly.
Yep, and use on every ride.
and use on every ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, maybe talk to us through the structure of a car seat. Like when you're dealing with an infant car seat, obviously we've got the base and all that. Maybe talk through some of the structure and just so we understand.
Like the key components, the pieces. All
right,
so the parts of a car seat. Okay, so on this rear-facing only car seat and all rear-facing, they have a handle, right?
Yes.
So this is our carry handle. They have a way to detach. Here's me showing if I know how to detach this particular car seat. Oh, nope, I found the recline. So I have a recline mechanism.
Right there.
Fumbling, did I get it? Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Okay. That was me without looking, trying to find our, so it will have some mechanism to release it from the staying car base. You're going to find a harness. You're going to find, it has 5 points of attachment. You're going to find a chest clip. You're going to find a crotch buckle. Sometimes you'll find, sometimes we call them soft goods, but they might be required or optional. Depending on the car seat, depending on what your manual says for when the padding should be added or removed, when it must be. You'll find the cover. You know, sometimes I'll see folks who have washed the cover and it's still wet and try to use it without the cover. Always need to have the cover on the car seat. You have to wait for it to dry or follow the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning. Some of them do have a canopy. This one has a kind of a lot of canopy, but we do have, sometimes they have that canopy, that shade. They'll have a way to adjust the harness. So in this case, we have a little rocking mechanism here where we can loosen and then tighten the harness. Okay, this is the belt path for use when you're using just the carrier without the staying car base. Gonna turn it around. You can see there's our national safety mark that we were looking for to make sure that it met Canadian standards for how this is used. So sometimes you'll see other ways to adjust the harness height. Sometimes you'll have to thread things through the slots to adjust the harness height, but in this case, it does have an adjustable harness.
Yep, we love a no rethread harness.
No rethread harness.
No rethread harness.
Yeah.
Love them.
Yeah, and then when we look at the staying car base, right? So I know we've got some, we don't want to, this one's going to be purchased by someone else, or maybe it's our floor model, but we will find our lower anchors, okay? Our UIS strap or the lower anchors to use to attach it to the vehicle, and alternatively, you can use the seat belt to attach it. This here is called the belt path, so that's how we would, the place where we would attach it to the vehicle. That's our belt path.
Can you talk to us a little bit about difference between the UAS versus belt?
Yeah.
Because belts typically hold a higher weight limit when you get into like the bigger seats and the convertible car
Right.
seats.
Yeah.
In the smaller seats, it may not be as much of a concern because of the weight limit. But what?
So why
what's
would
the
you
difference?
choose?
Why would you choose one?
Why
versus
would you
the
choose
other?
one or the other? So if you are installing the base into a vehicle, you're always going to use the seatbelt. It doesn't have the lower anchors on this one. I know there's one that does, but for the most part, you'd be using the seatbelt. When you have the staying car base, you can use either the seatbelt or the UAS, and either is safe as long as it's done correctly.
Okay.
So in most vehicles, there will be lower anchor points, right? Attachment points. Usually, if you've got like a sedan, they're required to have at least 2 positions, okay? They're on either side. So as long as you want to install this car seat on either side, you're usually good. Some of them will have, in the middle, they might have another position depending on the vehicle.
Sure.
They might have a flex position where you could use the middle, but not the side here because there is an overlap. So you can use either or. That's not to say you couldn't put 3 car seats across, but you can only use the lower anchors for one of them in that position.
Okay.
You know, like
use the belt for the other one.
Yeah, or it might work out where nothing overlaps or crosses over if you're using 3 seat belts. Like it's hard to say. We'd have to work on it. But there's a few different reasons why the lower anchors might fit better than the seat belt. And either is safe as long as they're used correctly, but it is less common to find a safe way to use the lower anchors in the center position.
Okay.
That's something where you might have to call the manufacturer to find out if that is permitted, or it just might not be very obvious.
Right.
And so in that case, if the middle's where you're looking for, you might want to use the seatbelt to install.
So in infant seats, it's like both are great as long as they're installed correctly.
Yep,
So
either is great, not both.
Both are great.
Both
fair
only if the car seat manufacturer says that it is permitted to do so.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we know we've installed it correctly?
Right. So we are looking for making sure, of course, that we followed the instructions in our manual.
Yep.
But really what we're looking for is we're looking for less than an inch of movement when you're wiggling it side to side where it's attached to the car. We say at the belt path, but where it's attached to the car. So we want to give it a little handshake, and we want to make sure that it moves less than an inch. An inch is the top of a water bottle.
Okay.
So that's like a good visual for like figuring that out.
Can I ask you a question on that?
So front to back and side to side. Yep.
Typically when I install for my kids, then you get a little paranoid, and I'm pulling it. I want no movement, and it's like as tight as can possibly be. Is that actually a problem? Because then you're removing a bit of play. Do you want a little bit of movement, or is like, hey, no, if you can get it tight, awesome.
So you
but
don't,
just don't
want a bit of movement.
Okay.
You don't. Tight is good, but you
good.
don't want to tighten it so that it's over tightening, so that it's stretching the seatbelt. Like I work with firefighters sometimes, and sometimes you see a firefighter climb onto a seat, or really, some of them are very strong. Some of them, they're used to kind of muscling their way through something.
Right.
There are other firefighters who are not doing this. So not to generalize about firefighters, but when I work with them, I always have to say, no, listen, we would like this to be
dial back.
We would like dial it back. We would like this to be firm and snug. A little movement is okay, right? That's the allowable range is an inch, right, of movement with a firm handshake. You don't want to. You're not trying to move this car seat because it will move, right? And you're also not asking to move this car seat in a way that the whole car moves when you move it, right? You don't need rock the car snug.
Okay, so I might be over tightening a hair.
We want something that's achievable by parents and caregivers, and you don't want to, especially on some of these that have like a lock off or a belt tightening mechanism.
Yeah.
You don't want to over tighten in such a way that it actually like stretches, deforms the seatbelt.
Okay.
Right? So you don't want to go crazy. You don't want to get onto the seat. Plastic and metal parts, right? You don't want to climb on. You don't want to use excessive force, but you do need to use an appropriate amount of force, right? Similarly, like when we're checking for movement, we're checking here, but I'm not trying to shove it across. I'm giving it a firm handshake and seeing if it moves. But also, sometimes we get caregivers who are like, well, it moves so much here. This is the fixed point. It's going to rotate around that point.
Right.
This movement's okay. Sometimes it moves like this. That movement's okay too. We're looking for movement and checking for movement at that belt path.
Okay, that makes total sense. Because often you talk to parents and they're like, oh, but it's not installed. You're like, no.
Where are we checking for movement?
Yes, right against the seat, not at the back of the seat.
Yeah. And then the other thing that we're always looking for in a rear-facing seat is making sure that the recline is correct for our child's age, weight, height, whatever the indicator tells us that we need to be looking for. Okay. And we want to make sure that it's as reclined as possible for our newborn, but there may be a more upright range that's allowed for an older baby. So you just want to make sure it's within the allowable range. And then you would look at your manual to see how to change and adjust that recline correctly. And it will tell you how, right? There might be a removable foot. There might be a recline mechanism on the base. It might be different instructions for when you're using the carrier loan versus the stay-in-car base.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question about the belt install on the actual car seat. Because I think when let's say this has happened to me.
Okay.
Base is installed in my partner's car. Yeah. I had the stroller. I was taking care of the little guy. We're going for a walk. Get back. I got to go do something.
Yep.
Now I've got to take and do a belt install.
Yep.
But that always felt like this was the most difficult to get right. Talk to me a bit about that. What changed?
You want to take that down and
install? Yeah. Break it down for us.
Yeah. So, and the thing that probably felt scary is that you're not doing it very often. Right. And so and also the stay-in-car base, the kiddo's not with you. You've got time. They're safe in the house somewhere, and you're taking a moment. You're reading the manual. Now all of a sudden you have your baby.
Yep.
And they're in the car seat, and they're judging you. They're looking at you and going, "Do you really know what you're doing? Is this actually how we use this?" Or they're saying, "Why am I still in the car seat when you're holding the handle while you're touching it? Why are you not taking me out?" Right? And maybe it's raining, maybe it's snowing, maybe it's hot, and now you're struggling to put this car seat in, and you've got a small human here who's maybe not so happy about what we're doing. And so that might be one of the reasons. So my recommendation is practice when your kiddo's not with you, right? Practice, feel it out. Obviously you're not going to use that motion of pushing the car seat down here with your hand because there's going to be a baby there.
Yep.
So practice pushing on like the outer edges of the car seat itself. And also when you're doing a seatbelt install, one of the key things is to push instead of just down, also into the back of the car to compress. And so maybe I can't always either, but sometimes it's easiest to get in the car and in behind and to kind of use your body weight to press it into the vehicle while also having two hands. because that's the tricky part. You can push down here, but I need that other hand to snug up the belt and to do it correctly in the belt path, however it tells you to do that.
Yeah, it's tough. I think honestly, the fact that you're allowed like that less than an inch play is helpful, because in my mind, initial installs, I was always like, if I can even move this a millimeter, it's not safe. Then you're panicking and you're trying to lean all your pressure into it.
And really check the instructions on your seat for how that seatbelt needs to be installed.
Yeah.
You know, of course, you always want to make sure the seatbelt is locked.
Yes.
Right? So you have to pull it all the way out until you hear that click so that it does not loosen further, right? So that it holds it at that fixed length. And again, always follow where the belt path is for your seat, because they are all different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, fits your car, fits your life, fits your child. One last question about this. I think that's one of those things we often think is not all cars are equal length, let's say.
Yeah.
And you've got your little one, and maybe you've got a slightly smaller car, and your ideal would be to have it behind the driver, but you're worried about how far back in order to drive safely and control the vehicle. What's the distance between back of the seat and the, let's call it the front seat?
Right.
Back of the car seat and the seat.
So I wish there was one straight, perfect answer that was the rule of thumb for that, or or the rule at all. But there isn't. And so some manufacturers will say, we require you to be as close as possible to the front seat, right? And so there's one line of companies that recommends that. Another line of companies of products will say we need to have at least 1.5 inches of clearance between the back of the car seat and the front seat. Okay. And so the only rule is that you need to follow the instructions for your seat.
Your seat. Right?
To make sure, of course, we wouldn't want the front seat pushing on the seat. And another thing that could cause that seat to become too loose is if the front seat is pushing on the seat, it's, applying pressure, you're never going to be able to get it tight. It's always going to be too loose. It might also be changing the recline of that seat with pushing your seat back and touching and compressing that seat. So you'd never want that. But again, as close as possible, one company, 1.5 inches of clearance for another. Okay. So clear as mud. Read the manual.
Read the manuals.
You know what? It is clear. That's where you're going to find
that's right.
that.
Read the manuals.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about convertible car seats?
All right, let's talk about convertible car seats.
Okay, so we've talked about the infant car seat. Let's talk about convertible car seats. Maybe first you give us like a definition of terms, because I know you said there is an actual definition of terms.
There is an actual definition. So a convertible car seat is one that can be used rear facing and then converted to be used forward facing. And so that's with the harness. So rear facing with the harness, forward facing with the harness. This seat in front of us is actually what we would call an all-in-one car seat, or a 3-in-1 car seat. People call them different things, like manufacturers do, but we generally say all-in-one to refer to the fact that it's a harness car seat, forward facing, then rear facing, then forward facing, and then finally you would take the harness out and use it as a belt positioning booster, meaning you're just using the seat belt over top of in the correct belt path. You convert it, you transform it into that booster seat. And so convertible means that it doesn't become a booster seat, and all-in-one means that it does eventually become a booster seat. And there's another type of seat called combination, where it's a forward-facing seat with a harness and then a booster seat, but it never goes rear-facing.
Never goes rear-facing.
Yeah. And then we have some dedicated boosters, high back and backless boosters. Yeah. So those are our overarching
that's all our terms. Okay.
Those are all of our terms. Yeah.
So we know this is an all-in-one, but it functions as a convertible.
Exactly.
So we can talk it through. I think one of the questions we get asked a lot is, do I need to do an infant car seat, or can I just go right to a convertible with an infant insert if it requires it? Like a lot of them will say right from 5 pounds. Maybe they come with the insert, maybe they don't. You can buy it separately. Thoughts on that?
So as long as your newborn fits safely, fits correctly, right? Like not all car seats that can that say that they go to 4 or 5 pounds are going to fit your infant at 4 or 5 pounds. So it's something to be aware of. Smaller infants may not fit like a larger convertible seat, but in some cases, smaller infants in some seats will fit a convertible car seat better than some infant seats. So it's really all about fit. Right. And it's hard to know. What we're looking for is we're looking for a low strap height, right? We're looking so that it can be adjusted to smaller to fit a smaller infant. We're looking for, perhaps some way to shorten the crotch buckle. Maybe that is like there's something that you do to shorten it itself within the seat, or it might be a pad that the car seat company has tested that lifts that baby or that child up.
Sort of like what we have right here.
This has a pad that is required at a certain weight and fit.
Right. So if you remove this, then you get a much longer crotch buckle strap,
Exactly.
and with it in, you now have it shortened.
But the key is that this came with this car seat and is tested with this car seat. We
Right.
would not want to add anything under a child to bump them up to that crotch buckle height.
So
Yeah.
assuming the seat either comes with or
Mhm.
has a manufacturer approved accessory,
Yeah.
definitely safe, no concerns as long as it fits the baby.
Yeah, as long as it fits the baby, I have no concerns with using a convertible car seat at the weight and height that the convertible car seat has approved it for, as long as that fit can be achieved, right?
Okay.
Because I will say, like 4 and 5 pound babies, which I work in a children's hospital in my day job, so I do see sometimes 3.5 and 4 pound and 5 pound babies. They're not all the same.
Right.
So some of them are long and skinny
Yeah.
and are kind of all head, and others are just like a compact little butterball of a baby. Like it really just depends. And so we're just looking for it to fit correctly on your baby. So in that case, it would be that the shoulder harness, we're looking for it to be at your shoulders, not above. So we don't want to see that coming from up around the child's ears. We want it to see it at or just below. But again, really a very small baby, it's probably going to be at, right? At their shoulder is where we would want to adjust it to fit. And we'd want to see that chest clip at armpit level. Okay, we don't want to see it up in their neck, and we don't want to see it down by their belly. So we want that to be, and we want to make sure that the harness can be properly adjusted on that infant, so that you can't, and to determine if that adjustment is achievable. In most cases, not all, but in most cases, the harness pads are permitted to be removed if they are interfering with the fit of a smaller baby. I mean, you can imagine how that would fit on a very, very small baby. So in most cases, rear facing, they can be removed on a smaller baby, and you're looking for that harness, and you want to see that when it's snug, it has been sufficiently tightened so that you can't pinch any webbing at the collarbone.
So it's a great question. I was going to ask about tightness. Like
Yeah.
when people think about the pinch test, what does that mean? Is it like there's enough you could pinch really tightly? What if you go to pinch and it moves a little? Like what's the kind of appropriate tightness?
You're looking for, when you've removed all of that hidden slack at the hips.
Yep.
And again, buckling a baby, it's not just like buckle, yoink, right? On the little tiny baby, you're getting all of that extra slack out, and you're folding it here, and you're folding it there, and you're working it out, and you're pushing down the chest clip as you go. Okay? That's how you're buckling. And then at the end, we want to make sure that that strap is snug so that your fingers bounce off. They can't hold that pinch.
So if you can pinch and hold, it's too loose.
If you can pinch and hold, it's too loose. And sometimes what people will do, because as parents and caregivers, this is our first baby, like we're leaving the hospital, we want to make sure it is tight. So you can pinch a tiny bit of fabric here, and you can just tighten until it pops out of your fingers, right? And that's a good way to not call it the reverse pinch test. It's a good way not to over tighten, right? Because we don't need. Sometimes I see parents and caregivers coming out of the NICU, right? Well, I see if I push on this little adjuster and I see, so it happened here actually. So we've got it really tight. You push on the adjuster and you see it reinflate. That's tight enough. So you can push on it and the baby has, taken a breath, because we don't want to see, a baby that's compressed down. Sometimes you see people testing for tightness here. They can feel that there's some space there, but there's always going to be space there, right? And it also depends on the shape of the seat. A more straight L-shaped seat, there's not going to be as much room kind of under the harness. But if the seat has more of a curve, you're always like it's from point A to point B, it's going to be curved. There'll be a little bit of space there. And that's why we test with the pinch test, is because we're not thinking about if we can get our finger under, or does our finger go over here? His little arm can fit under there. That must mean it's not safe. No, we're looking at just, can we get a pinch of webbing horizontally at the collarbone?
That's so helpful. And in rear-facing mode, with infant insert or without infant insert, the buckle and where it sits on their shoulders is different than forward-facing, if I understand that correct, right? You're looking for a different angle.
Yeah, so for rear-facing, you're right. We're looking for that at or below. And when this car seat becomes forward-facing, I'm going to loosen off the harness. This padding would be removed for forward-facing. Okay, so if we did adjust that, and this was for an older forward-facing child, again, here we go. Oh, look at that. Great, grab that right out. That's perfect. Not too much. So if this was adjusted for an older, taller, forward-facing child, in some cases you might have to rethread the harness behind the seat, but in this case we were able to just move it up with a handle, or no rethread harness on this one. Okay, and we would want to do the exact same. So we want to make sure that there's no hidden slack. We would also want to check to make sure that the crotch buckle is in the correct position for an older child. In some cases, the crotch buckle needs to be in the most forward position, always when forward facing, but it might be weight-based. It might say this buckle position at this weight,
Right.
this one, or it might be fit based.
Okay.
Use this buckle position until it goes under the child.
So read
and then
your
move it.
read your manual.
And the only place you're going to find that crotch buckle position is in your manual. It's
Okay.
not going to be anywhere on your labels. And so you want to check and make sure that the crotch buckle is in the correct position. You want to make sure that it is in the slot. If there's slots you're changing, that it's reinforced for forward facing, that it does say you can use these slots for forward facing. And you want to get that harness snug. You still are always going to want the chest clip at armpit level. Okay, because the chest clip's job is to hold the harness straps up over the child's shoulders. Okay, and so
always cross here.
Yep, and you want to make sure that that harness is sufficiently tightened at the end. I mean, there's no kiddo in this now. Maybe we'll do that later. So that, again, you can't pinch that webbing at the collarbone. And you're correct that this needs to be no longer at or below. Now it needs to be at or above a child's shoulders.
So looking for this angle versus this angle.
Exactly. This is still fine. You can still have it at, but at or above, not ever below. And the reason we don't want it ever below is when you think about it, if there was a kiddo here and this was below their shoulders, so if we had, if we had a kiddo who was right up here and this was down below their shoulders, they're going to move forward in a collision until this catches them, right? And if it's below their shoulders, they're going to move that much more forward before that is going to hold them. And it just increases that much more movement of a child's head in a collision. Yeah.
For headrest positions, where are we looking for a little one's head to be positioned?
Right. So if we're going to talk about a little one, we should probably make this little again. Yeah. So we don't have to make it all the way to newborn. Oh, I suppose I should have folded that. There we go. So where are we looking if we are putting an infant in this particular seat?
Yep.
So we're looking for where the strap harness goes. And in this case, this headrest moves up and down with the harness. And so that's where it's going to be, you know, positioned on a child's body, is with the harness.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. I think that's the that's the answer to that one. Yeah.
So as long as we're matching the harness correctly, that we're okay with like the little
for
bit
this
of differences
particular
for this
seat.
particular seat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would, again, I got to follow your manual for that too. It depends on the seat.
Okay. We know for install, it's going to be similar idea for movement, right? We're talking no less than an inch of play from the base. Yeah. This is where UAS versus buckle might change a little bit, I would imagine, because there's weight constrictions or limitations on either side. That's right.
So there are weight restrictions on the lower anchors, but not on. So if this was in a rear-facing mode or a forward-facing mode, you can use the lower anchors or the seatbelt to install it.
Yep.
And the lower anchors, you would look at what the weight was for that that particular car seat, if it had a weight restriction on when you had to stop using the lower anchors.
Yep.
And your vehicle might have a weight restriction on when you need to stop using the lower anchors. But alternatively, you know, most car seats, for the most part, will say that you can't use the lower anchors if the combined weight of your child plus the car seat is more than 65 pounds.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of math in there. You have to know how much your child weighs. You have to know how much the car seat weighs.
Right.
But you know, this is information
So
your
you got a
manufacturer
25-pound
has.
car seat, 40-pound kid, no more latches.
Yeah, no more lower anchors. Yeah. That's right. So just the lower anchor. But of course, if it was a forward-facing seat, we would then install it with the seat belt, and we would always still use the tether. Okay. The tether is key when it comes to a forward-facing car seat. We want to make sure, again, we talked about why we didn't want it below their shoulders if they were forward-facing, how much more movement, and the tether is the same. In a crash, the whole car seat is going to rotate around that lower anchors or the belt and move forward, and that tether is what's going to hold the top part of the car seat back and prevent that child from getting that much more momentum, that much more movement, and is going to mean the difference between possibly a serious head injury and no injury at all. So tether, important. Tether. Always, no matter what weight.
How tight? As tight as you can get it, or?
No, not as tight as you can get it. You don't need to deform or break the car seat or break the tether, but you want to attach that. You want to clip it to the designated tether anchor for this seat. Yeah. So we're going to clip it on, and maybe that's, you know, in the windowsill, or it could be up in the ceiling, or it could be on the back of the vehicle seat. It could be underneath. Sure. It could be on the rear ledge. You know, there's lots of different places. The only way to know where the tether anchor is in your vehicle is to read your manual for your vehicle, or to contact your manufacturer. Or in some cases, there's a little anchor picture on it. But in most cases, you've already put a kiddo in there at some point, and that little cover might be off. So you might not know, is this a cargo hook? Or is this a tether anchor that can hold the top part of this car seat? So you want to attach it to a designated tether anchor, and then we want to install the car seat first. Okay. So we want to make sure the car seat is snug to the car, has that less than an inch of movement at the belt path before tightening the tether. Because if we tighten it first, it's going to lift the car seat up, and it's going to be impossible to ever get that snug to the vehicle, right? That's the part that's holding it to the car. This is the part that's holding the top part from moving forward. And so we've already attached it because we don't want it to get stuck or lost behind. But then our final step is always going to be to remove the slack out of the top of the tether, right? So you want to snug that up. You want to make sure that it's, that there's no slack in that webbing. You can't pinch anything, but it doesn't need to deform the top of the vehicle seat. And again, you're going to route that. It could be over the headrest on the vehicle. It could be under the headrest on the vehicle, or even around.
Okay.
So you're just going to follow the instructions for your seat of how to route that particular tether.
Read your car seat manual, read your vehicle manual.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I do know they're organized well. So if you go to your vehicle manual, you can find the section for this.
There is a child safety section.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's usually near the front of the book. Usually just after how to adjust the radio.
Okay, so I think we've covered the install, which is critical. We've talked about when you're rear facing, how you want at or below the shoulders, where the chest cup needs to sit, how we adjust the sides, how tight we need to actually pull it, whether we've got the crotch strap correctly
in the right
and
spot.
comfortably placed on your child. We've talked about when you when you switch and you go forward facing, that now you're going to be at or above your shoulders, which is going to change the angle. Talked about installing your tether. I think that's where we start getting outside of, we get into like each car seat now starts to get a little bit specific. So why don't we go from here, briefly touch on booster, and then I think we need to talk safety. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay, so this stage of the video, I'm going to be a little bit selfish, because I have a 6-year-old who's ready. He's at the weight, like maximum weight or minimum weight for a booster seat, above that, and he's a tall, lanky little guy. So I want to move him into a booster seat and give him a little bit more, one, to be honest, like leg room, because he's getting squished behind me, but also two, he's ready and he's capable of buckling and he's ready for that next stage. Yeah. What do I need to know?
Right. So before moving your child into a booster seat, you want to make sure that they weigh at least 40 pounds or 18 kilograms and not just like barely 40 pounds, not like, okay, a stiff wind or like, one sick week could get
So he's 52 pounds.
Amazing. Okay. So we want to make sure that, they meet, of course, the height minimum for the booster seat that you have for the next stage seat. But also we want to make sure that
4'1", so I know he's good for the height. Yeah.
So then we also want to make sure that they are developmentally ready to sit in a booster seat with the seatbelt correctly placed on their body and to stay within that on every ride, right? And so the entire ride, I should say, because some people are like, is my child ready? They're 3, they're 4, they're 5, are they ready? And I say, you know what? If you were to walk down the sidewalk and, holding your child's hand, if you let go of their hand, could you walk along the sidewalk and know that your child was going to walk along beside you, was not going to dart out into traffic, was not going to go pet that dog on that yard? Could you walk, if you told them to, if you said, could you know without looking that your child was going to follow you, right? And that's what we're really looking at for that. While you're driving, can you know that your child is going to leave that seatbelt where it needs to go, that they're not going to bend down and touch their toes, they're not going to lean over, they're not going to put the belt under behind their back or in a place, or they're not going to unbuckle and
it's
leave
like they're old
the
enough
car.
to be responsible with the
They
responsibility.
Have to be, that's it. They need to have that responsibility for their safety, right? You're ultimately responsible. You really are. And adults should check how they're buckled every time to make sure that it's in the correct location on their body. Again, we talked a little bit about the study to make sure that it was routed correctly on the booster seat itself, however the instructions, told us to do, and that it was properly adjusted, right? Like that's going to be our role too, to make sure that we talked about for the forward-facing seat, we want to make sure that the shoulder belt comes out at or above their shoulder, that it's properly placed, and that we've adjusted our booster seat to make sure that it keeps that in the right place.
Okay, so let's talk through that because we know we're going to get into all the safety facts. One spoiler ahead, booster seats are where we saw the most crazy misuse numbers. So we got to spend a couple seconds here. Yeah. So we just assessed based on that. My kid's good.
Your
he's
kid
responsible.
Sounds like he's
tall
ready.
enough. He's heavy enough. He's mentally ready. I can trust him. So I'm going to put him in one. What do I need to think about, and how do I make sure that he is safely?
Well, let's talk about how a booster seat works. So a booster seat's a little different than a harness car seat. A harness car seat, we would install it snug to the car, and then there's a harness that's a part of the car seat that holds them in a crash. But in this case, the booster seat, the seatbelt's really the star of the show. The seatbelt is what's holding a child in a crash. The booster seat is helping the child be in a position where the seatbelt is going to fit safely on their smaller body, smaller than an adult. So in this case, you can see that there are belt guides on this booster seat. There's a location where the seatbelt has to go. So we're going to buckle it up. I know we don't have a kiddo for this particular booster seat this time, but we want to make sure that that is correctly routed through those belt guides. And in this case, we also have a shoulder belt guide here. Okay, and what those belt guides are going to do is they're going to hold this. You can see this little notch.
Yep.
We have an adult pelvis and hips, right?
Right.
A child does not have that adult pelvis and hips. And so this is kind of acting like a little bit of an artificial hip where it's going to hold that this lap portion of the belt down across their hips, across their pelvis. And we want it low so that it's touching the tops of their thighs. This is holding a child in place by their strongest bones, right? Their pelvis and their thighs and their collarbone here, right? We don't want this belt, if they were just sitting in a seatbelt alone, to be up over their soft belly. We don't want this shoulder belt to be off of their shoulders so that they rotate around in a collision. We don't want it to be up over their face. We don't want them to tuck it behind their back.
They would tuck it behind the back. That was the move. So we're saying that's not the way to do it.
So we actually have, there's a pretty significant artery under your arm. Like, we would not want it to be under their arm. And also, if a child did tuck it under their arm, the top part of their body is no longer being held back by their strongest bones, right? So what happens is their body rotates around in a collision and can cause a lot of damage. And so really, we want them to stay upright. We want them to be in the best position that's going to give them the best chance of minimal injury in a collision. So that's what we're looking for: the shoulder belt to be up. We want it to touch their chest, and we want it to stay between their neck and their shoulder. And we want it to be there on every ride and for every moment of that ride as well. And so that's where we're going to keep that shoulder belt. And we want to make sure that I do also see this sometimes where the seatbelt itself is not properly adjusted. And so now the kiddo has grown, and now the seatbelt's coming below their shoulder and it's kind of off their shoulder. And just someone hasn't checked and gone, oh, you grew. We got you new shoes. We forgot to go look at your booster seat so that we can adjust that up to a higher height so that it can go at or above their shoulders in a correct position.
Can I ask a couple stupid questions?
No, absolutely. It's no stupid questions.
So when we install and kid pops out, he or she is leaving the belt in here at all times then? Or are they taking this out and reinstalling it each time they
No, it generally stays.
Okay.
Right? As long as they haven't unintentionally locked the belt. So sometimes when a kiddo is buckling themselves up, they pull that belt all the way out and it locks.
Yep.
And it's not necessarily like a safety issue for that ride, right? You don't have to pull over and unlock it. You could be like, okay, hold tight till we get there, bud.
Yeah.
Right? And in that case, you may find that you don't have enough belt to unlock it. And so that happens. We've all done that where you're reaching all the way down. Oh, the belt is locked. And now I'm stuck here until I get to my destination.
Yes.
And so it's a comfort feature. He's not going to want to ride like that every ride. And so that would be when you'd have to unhook it from the shoulder so that, sometimes, most times, so that you put all of it back in the seatbelt and can unlock it. Right? Can bring it out again. But no, he could just leave it right there.
Okay.
That's where it could stay. And so every time he hops in, it's already ready for him to pull and to buckle himself.
Yep.
But again, at 6, you're going to want to go back there and you're going to want to be like, okay, lift your hands. All right, I see 1, 2, 3, right? It is exactly in the belt path. It's where it should be. And remember, it's got to stay there on every ride.
Okay.
The other tip that I do talk about with parents and caregivers is we do also need them to stay in this position while sleeping. And so there's a moment when you talk about maturity where you've got a 3-year-old, when they fall asleep in something like this, they would crumple down into a ball, right?
Yep.
And with an older child, typically they can sleep for a short time in a booster. They can nap. They can fall asleep in a booster seat when they're ready. And the trick is to tell them to look up.
Okay.
And so, okay, bud, I see you're starting to fall asleep. And he's like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. I'm slipping. I'm whatever. Like they get really kind of, fidgety.
Yep.
And the trick to staying asleep in a booster seat is if you look up, your head will kind of tip back. And then they'll do this thing where they're like, their whole body is slumped, but it's still in the correct position, right? And so I would say, just remember, look up, and you can look up to the side too also helps. And that helps them maintain that position rather than like dangling into a crumpled
crumpling
little ball.
down over you.
Yeah, and so once they're a little older, they can do it. Yeah, but you coach them, teach them how to sleep sitting upright.
This is where the maturity part really starts to come into play.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to coach them through that.
Yeah.
Even the buckling, like say they get themselves buckled, you do the check. They still have to be able to go, okay, pull it up, get it over, buckle it. They have to have
Yeah.
enough reach. So it's not even just like, oh, you're 42 pounds. Like, well, can they even reach to buckle themselves in
Well,
at the
and you know,
seat?
but they couldn't reach with the harness seat either. And so it's okay that, okay, they're in a booster seat, but I know I'm going to have to do it
Okay.
every time. And then it's just coaching the other people in your life transporting your kid to say, like, oh, hey, grandparents, mom and dad, like, remember when you take my kid, he can't actually reach fully to buckle himself. He'll try, but you're going to
You're
have
gonna
to
have to
make
do
sure it fits like this. You're going to have to make sure he can reach,
Okay.
or else it's going to get locked, or else he's like stuck, kind of pulling it ahead. So
Yeah.
it's not he's responsible to stay there safely, but he might need your help to buckle or to make sure that he's buckled correctly for a couple more years.
Okay.
And even then, I have looked in the backseat to find my like 9-year-old, and I'm like, "What's with your belt?
Right.
What is happening? I didn't check today, yesterday, or last week. Maybe I should get back to checking again because I
Okay.
see that we're starting to slip." You know how it is with parenting?
Yeah.
You tell a kid
Get
something when they're
comfortable.
4, and you remember you told them, but now they're 5 and they don't remember you telling
Yeah.
them ever, right? Like we feel like
You
we
get comfortable, you get
reiterated.
used to the routine, and then
Yeah.
they, you know,
Exactly. And then
different
you have to
memory.
go like, let's talk about this. Well, I remember
or they
telling
start
you.
wanting to rebel maybe a little bit. And like, maybe I
Or
don't put
they
my
just
seat in. I
they
don't
they
wanna
went
put
with a
it in.
friend
Yeah.
and a friend didn't do that and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm going to do what my friend did." Right? So, and that's the other thing is you get to have different rules in your car and for your kids than their friends do, right? Where you're
Yes.
like, the other thing, the advice would be to stay in this booster seat for as long as they still need it,
Yeah.
right? We talked about like how they're going to fit that 5-step test. We want to see before they move out of this booster seat, we want to see them properly fitting that seatbelt the same way they are with the booster seat without.
Well, you've
right?
mentioned that you've seen 17-year-olds that you needed to put into a booster
So
based on
I work at a
size and height
children's
proportions.
hospital, and I
Yes.
do work with kids of all different shapes and sizes.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are people who are small statured or little people who may need a booster seat, but you're right, it's based on size.
Yep.
Right? It is absolutely based on size. And so we have kiddos who may still need a booster seat longer than the minimum law that was made. How many years ago was
Right.
the law made? Like a long time ago. Things have changed. There's been innovations. There's new products. We know more. We do better.
Yeah.
Right? And so we want to keep a kiddo in a booster seat until they can fit that adult seatbelt. And what we're looking for is we're looking for with their bum all the way back in the seat. Does the lap belt fit low and snug across their hips? Does that shoulder belt fit between their neck and their shoulder and resting on their chest? Do their knees bend comfortably over the edge? Because if they don't, they're going to slip down. They're going to slump, and then the belt is suddenly coming up over their belly. Right? The shoulder belt is coming up over their face, and when it's like that, they tuck it under their back. Right?
Yep.
So we want to make sure that it's properly fitting them. And the last step is that they can stay like that for the whole ride.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So
You don't want them trying to sit like this and hold.
hold because it's not going to last.
No.
Nobody can do that. So you want to keep them, and we want to keep them in that booster seat. Generally, this maturity, this passing the 5-step test happens around the 4'9" mark, and you can figure out where it is on you. On me, it's here. So if I can put my chin on rest on a child's head, they're like almost there. So we're looking at 4'9" tall is about when they start fitting the vehicle seatbelt properly without. And all the seats are different. So sometimes you can get like a long, wide captain seat in a van, or you can get a shorter seat in like the third row of an SUV, right? And so they might need a booster seat for longer in one vehicle versus another.
Okay.
So maybe they pass the 5-step test in that third row of an SUV, right?
Yeah.
And it might be a year or two before they pass it in the captain's chair of a van. So it really just depends on, it's all about height and length, leg length, and how they fit. So keep your kiddo in a booster seat for longer, for sure.
Last question on boosters, and then we're going to talk about the study.
Yeah.
Is installs different per seat?
Yeah.
It sounds like the most crucial thing is the belt, but is there any like general rules we need to touch on when it comes to install of booster seats? Because some have rigid latches, some have soft latches, some have no latches. So,
that's right. Yeah. So some booster seats, there's no installation per se. You're sitting it on the vehicle seat and the seatbelt goes over the child and the booster seat. For those particular booster seats, the most important thing to know is that when that kiddo hops out, the seat isn't attached in any way. And so you want to remind them to buckle it back up when they hop out so that in a crash, that's not going to fly around and possibly injure the other children who are in the vehicle. And so that's important to make sure that it's attached to the vehicle. Some other, like this was an all-in-one car seat that has now been transformed into a booster. And so this seat gives you permission to keep it, installed and attached, either with the lower anchors and in some cases the tether as well. wouldn't be with the seatbelt because the seatbelt's holding the child in the car, right? And so that means that they don't have to unbuckle it back up when they go out. And it means when they're climbing into the car, it doesn't fall over, it doesn't slide, it stays put. And so the booster seat stays where it's supposed to be. So it's a nice feature to have. Not necessary.
Not necessary.
But,
Yeah.
but it's nice to have.
This is the big show.
Yes,
Yes.
the seatbelt is the big thing. That is the thing that's keeping your kiddo. You can have everything else installed and your kid's sitting on it. We would consider that child unrestrained.
Okay.
Doesn't matter how much attached the seat is. If the child isn't attached also, they are not actually in a booster seat. They need to have the seatbelt and it needs to be correctly placed on their body on every ride. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That's helpful for me and I know for many of our viewers. Wow. That was a ton of information. And I know it can feel overwhelming, so rewatch sections. That's totally fine. We want you to feel confident and prepped to install your car seat in your car safely. This is one of the most important things you can do for your family. And so we wanted to make sure you had the best information possible from the expert. Now remember, we have a previous video that has a full interview with Katherine that also talks through the study that was partnership with Cybex all across Canada. So make sure you go watch that if you haven't yet. Also, if you haven't watched any of our video demos on specific products and you're interested to understand what car seat is the best for you and your family, we've got tons of demos. So go through our YouTube channel, go through our social channels, go to our website, read our product descriptions. We've also got a ton of Learning Center articles, which is our blog that's got full reviews on every product. So we've got a lot of different ways for you to make the very best decision. I mean, heck, you can always just go in the store. We've got incredible reps there who want to help you. But we still want to make sure that you know how to buy a car seat and then use it properly, because there's no point in just picking a random car seat if you're not going to install it correctly. And we hope this information will give you the confidence to move forward safely with your family. Couple quick thanks. Katherine, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. We're thrilled to have you out. Thank you to Cybex for putting this together, for bringing her, literally flying her out for us to chat with. We're so appreciative of that effort and that time. And we're glad to have amazing partners who want to really put safety at the forefront. If you could like, comment, subscribe, that would be awesome. It really helps us get this information out further and help protect the world and help protect Canadian families and their little ones. Thank you so much. We hope you have a wonderful day.